Now, similar to what we just had in Eden Zero, for those who read, both for of Mishima series, we just had the first people of the current arc's big boss show up and pretty much have their first fights, and we're having essentially that right now in Fairy Tail, with Celine's people. So I'm hoping for a bit of a similar level, at least, if not more. One of these guys I have obviously big hopes for. I've talked about it in I think I talked about it briefly in the latest review, and then I talked about it on stream. But outside of Hakune, I don't expect Yoko and Mimi to really just kind of be absolute monsters or anything to be crazy. Hakune, I definitely think needs to have a good display, if not stalemate Natsu and Gray, which is a little crazy to think about, but I'll give my reasoning as to why. Because when I compared it to Eden Zero, in Eden Zero it's different, because we're going into we essentially went into the current arc only with the rank and idea of where the main villain would be at in terms of his level, just by rank that he has, and then other characters at said level. But we were still okay, we're getting a first feel of his bad guys, of his minions, and I want that with Celine's people. Celine's people, though, like I said, are different, because the difference with Celine versus Nero is Celine has a lot of... She's way further, obviously, in her story, and because of that, there's way more tying her minions in what they should at least be capable of versus what Nero's. And again, and when I say that, I don't mean that in the point of trying to compare Eden Zero and Fairy Tail at all from a story standpoint, or they're two different stories. Just because it's the same author doesn't mean that they're gonna have the same aspects to them. I'm sure everyone can say oh, this part is similar, but look how much different this turn went. But with Nero's people, it was the first people showing up, I was okay, I just want them to not be fodder, because this is an upcoming villain we don't really know about. With Celine's, the fact they're tied to Celine means that they should be at a certain level that we've already seen. They should all be somewhere, I would say somewhere closer to the God Seeds. They don't have to all be as broken as some of them, but I'm hoping they're at least as capable of, in terms of where their level is at. Because even though the God Seeds didn't get the most, their fights weren't very long, side of the God Seed Alderaan, and then a little bit of Wolfens, but they definitely showed from their abilities that they were all really powerful. And Yoko, Mimi, and Hakune, I think, really have a high position to live up to. Again, I don't expect them all to be I don't expect them all to push their opponents to the brink. Mimi, maybe a little bit, but her whole setup, I'm guessing she's the weakest out of the three, I would assume, just from the fact that she's just versus Lucy, whereas the others are Urza and Wendy versus Yoko, and then Natsu and Gray versus Sukune. So let's get to Mimi first. The only thing I really want to say about Mimi is I hope Mimi gives us a really good Lucy moment. Then I guess I can say that about all of them. I really hope each of them gives us some really good moments of the main cast, because again, I don't see these fights being all the big mega action packed battles that you really would see something way later. These are first bouts, so really all I'm expecting out of these guys for the most part is just getting to put up a level that is at least respectable for where they should be at versus where the main cast is going to be at. Because one thing again is that we know about Elentier and the setup that they're in is the main cast all should be more powerful, because the traits of Elentier's level of magic and whatnot, but also I would expect them all just to have some form of significant boost trait to it, kind of like what we saw. Lucy doesn't need her keys around and doesn't even have to summon them to get Taurus out. Her keys, the fact she doesn't need her keys around to use their power is again also very a very big boost for her. And then her summons automatically summoning themselves like that. She's had it before, but only certain spirits. So it is a very strong bonus for her. I would like to see maybe like her casting Aranametria by herself or some form of evolved version of against Mimi. The only thing I'd say about Mimi is like, again, love, like actually getting to, you know, not be fodder throwaway. That is one thing I want. Like every single version, every single character rather tied to a dragon god or even Diablos. Like any relevant character should have a level of power or display at least up to their kind of like position that they're at now, because we're all big people. This isn't random fodder guy that or random fodder guild that has one strong person. You know, as much as I, you know, it's hard to say for poor Quattro Cerberus, but that's really kind of what they are. They're still like really powerful in comparison to the average guild, but really when you look at them in relevancy, like the only person they had was Bacchus. So Mimi and all of them being gods, like dragon god level minions, or sorry, dragon god tier minions, they should all be somewhat strong. They are, you know, not the big mega characters that, you know, we can kind of compare it to, like where, you know, Zara had August and Irene. As far as we know, and these guys could be like the equivalent to the weakest of the Sprickens, still strong, but out of this specific unit, Celine's Moonlit Beauty Gods, these could be the weakest. I do think, though, regardless, each of them have to have a pretty considerable power. Even if Mimi's is generic, like in terms of the full-on display of it, like if she does something to kind of make herself really strong, I'm like the idea, like here's an example of like what her power could be, that it could be something broken. Maybe she like connects to the spiritual, like uses a spiritual art connecting to the whole area, where it's like to move, like she connects to the terrain, so it's like to move her, you have to be able to move like, I don't know, let's just say like 5 square miles that she's like connected to, so you essentially have to be able to uproot all that like weight. Like imagine she absorbs that entire amount essentially of like land, and then she's that heavy, like she does like a hack's way to get like absurd levels of just physical strength, because it'd be like the weight that she'd have to, or like the level of strength she'd have to move it, as well as like the weight she would have. It'd just be like a really cool hack's way of it being like a basic-ish good power. Like, because like some people expect her just being very physically strong, but that would be boring. If it's like, oh, my power lets me kind of connect to a certain level of terrain, and then I absorb the weight and then like of that somehow, and then it's like she has to, you know, would have the physical strength to move it, just for her to move around and stuff. But Yoko's like, because Mimi's, I don't expect Mimi to be crazy. I expect Mimi to be fair, but still at least done in a way that is respectable for her level. Kind of like how, you know, when you had like Metro is really, when you think about it, he just made a bunch of big minions, but those big minions could take hits from Godchill level people, so it's like, yeah, those guys are at least something. And the fact that he's, you know, he's able to merge with Alderaan and move around and just kind of like add an extra way of just keeping distance on top of his very powerful minion spam, very good. I mean, really, when look at Dooms are, you know, having spores, but they're broken spores. They're super broken, and they're like fate manipulation, instant kill hacks and stuff. I do expect Mimi to have something considerable. It can't just be like, I'm very physically strong. My power is like, once I stand somewhere, I can't be moved. Because like it has to be something that isn't just basic. Just by who she's tied to. I mean, she's tied to Celine, and apparently they're all going to be yokai, so there's going to be extra stuff on top of what we already have about him. Yoko's is a little bit weird because of who she's fighting. She's against, you know, high utility and high support, while both of these two have a very strong level of offense and just general quick wit in combat about them. Yoko's, I don't see having to be as big. Like, it could easily just be she makes these spiritual art minions. Like, hers is different because with Mimi, I think has to have at least a good display because Lucy's by herself. So I think Lucy deserves to have at least a 1-chapter solid fight, maybe chapter and a half, 2 chapters, where she gets to have like a really good display, and we just get to have some nice Lucy flex, see what she's capable of in Elentier, maybe an upgrade for her or something. Okune, though, is where things need to get serious, and I've talked about her briefly in streams and stuff, but I will just I'll jump right to why I think she has to be strong, and a few reasons. One, her title alone because her title, it's like the snow and flowers. Yeah, okay, cool. But her, one of the aspects of her title, because Mimi's the immovable, Yoko's like, was it like night parade of 100 demons or something, and Yoko's is of the snow, moon, and flowers. The fact that Selene is the moon dragon goddess, and the moon is clearly a very important aspect tied to her, and just the theme, as well as, you know, her dragon type and how she uses her abilities. The fact Hakune has moon tied to her has to be significant. There's no way you can't have in your title something directly directly tying to and represented as, you know, your master, whatever, like they would refer to Selene as, lever goddess, however way they would describe. There's no way you would be able to like have that title directly on your chest essentially and put out in every fight, and not have a very high level of significance. The way that I'm guessing is that she's kind of like how Scoleon is to Madmol and Kyrie, where it's like there's like Mimi and Yoko are strong, but maybe they're like lower in terms of like the rest of them, and then you have like an upper one of them to lead them, kind of like what Scoleon seems to be when it comes to Madmol and Kyrie. He just seems to be the strongest and the leader from what's been shown, and I'm guessing that's what Hakune is out of the group, because the other thing that she has is she's against Natsu and Gray, and that's not big just from its Natsu and Gray. You have Fire Knights, but you have both of them have counter abilities. You have Natsu obviously having heat, very high level of heat, very high potency heat, and then Gray being an Ice Devil Slayer, so he should be able to, he already has a high resistance to the cold, he should be able to eat her attacks and whatnot. But also they're the two strongest out of the main cast. You have the main character and the main character's rival character, so like they're both so much stronger and like where they're at, plus because the Ellen tier boost as well, so they're the strongest plus Ellen tier, plus they counteract her. So if she's not like very significantly powerful, then they should just be able to completely defeat her. Like, granted, she should have like, she should have powerful magic from both being, you know, a high level minion of a minion of Selene, and like I said, I suspect a high level minion. Being tied to Selene in general should make her powerful. I assume she has spiritual art stuff. She should have magic as well, so the Ellen tier boost level of magic. She should be strong, and I'm really hoping Mishima either has her kind of stalemate them, or has some reason that Natsu and Gray have to really push themselves to fight her, or maybe she's just a very high level character, because we know that they're both very strong, but Dragon God is still fairly out of their reach, not counting Natsu's, like, you know, boosted form from his Aetherius Dragon Force, and Mersobi doesn't count, obviously. But when it comes to, you know, just them as they are, they can't contend with Dragon God level people. I'm not going to talk about like Natsu's Dragon Force, because it's a very highly significant boost. Alderon that we fought, that he defeated with it, was not at full power, obviously, because of the way that his power worked with the other God Seeds. But if Hakune's just in that kind of level, like maybe she's upper Spriggan level, because Selene having at least like a couple people like around like somewhere in like the Larcade, August, Irene level people would be crazy if she had like people like that. But again, it would make sense, because we already saw that the Alderon's God Seeds were like definitely upper, like somewhere in like the mid, like somewhere I think actually in mid Spriggan level is the better way to put it, because none of them seem August and Irene tier, but none of them seem like really lower like Jacob and Nineheart level. But we'll see. I feel really hyped to see where this goes. It's a little bit longer in this prediction video, just because for the most part I wanted to talk about each of these, because I think we can assume Mimi's is going to be the first fight, just because it ended with Mimi and she's the only one-on-one fight. But I wanted to talk about each of them because it was left off on Mimi, and again, Mimi is the most likely, but it could easily go to any of them, and then we could just be getting this fight done in, again, whatever order. My guess, though, is Mimi will lose. Mimi or Yoko will definitely lose first. It'll be weird if Hakune loses first, then all these guys are probably going to be fodder. This is my assumption. It could not be the case. Maybe Yoko or maybe is actually the strongest out of this group, but my guess is Hakune. Hakune's also done in like the most creepy, like serious way. Like Yoko looks kind of like she's like a fighter, but not like she's going to be that powerful. And then like Kukune looks way more elegant, looks way more kind of sinister, like the way that she was depicted. And then Mimi looks like she's going to be like the powerful kind of like silly character with just the way that we've seen of her so far. But anyway, other than that, I'll comment below, thumbs up the video, friend the like button, subscribe. And I just wanted to, it's again a little bit longer because I wanted to talk about each of these just because of the scenarios that they're in. And Mishima better not mess up the fact that Gray should be able to adapt to Hakune's ice at any point, because even if she can hurt him with the cold from the start, like she has potency to kind of hurt him from base, or even his kind of like standard ice devil form, he should be fast enough to adapt to it. Because we saw from Invul that he can adapt the durability voiding cold, so the only thing that should like matter when it comes to Gray versus another ice person, if they can like is based off two questions: can they damage him from the start, and are they fast enough? Because even if they can damage him from the start, if Gray's fast enough, then he can just adapt to it. It wouldn't matter. Where it's like if they both can hurt him and they're too fast for him, he can't. I would just assume. But anyway, other than that though, comment below, thumbs up the video, but from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Other than that, I appreciate everyone's already subscribed. Thank you all for listening. Bye.